Hi guys, Station ID, No Holds Barred TV. This is one of the Robin Hood Diaries, which are the shows, 10-minute shows I do that are separate from my separation, 6-degree separation chats that I do. Of which, let's just touch on those real quick because we only have 10 minutes for my topic. Next week, I believe Tuesday, a woman very dear to my heart. She was my hero, essentially, when I was a social worker. And she works, well, we've just got a lot to talk about. And it is very tied into my book more than you can imagine. Speaking of which, I'm going to plug my favorite charity this evening, or at least for this evening, this week, long time. And they're called Children of the Night. They're based in Los Angeles. Children of the Night have been around for a long time. In fact, when I was a social worker, I worked in tandem with Children of the Night. They help youth in crisis, particularly homeless youth, and particularly those that are subject to predators, particularly being homeless on the streets. So that's their focus, those types of children in those situations. And it's very near and dear, as I said, to my heart. The number that you can call for Children of the Night with, if you have any interest, is area code 818. That's my old San Fernando Valley area code. Again, 818-908-4474. The lady you should speak with is Lois, if she's there. And she can actually be emailed at lois@childrenofthenight.org, not com, org. And again, it's a wonderful charity. And it's been around for a very, very long time, and it is extremely legitimate and reputable. So tonight's topic, interesting. The lead-in, or the whatever, blast blurb about what this show's going to be on tonight, was a picture of Tom Hanks in drag in his very popular series called Bosom Buddies in the 70s and 80s, early 80s, I don't know, 80s, whatever. So touching on that, I said this drag queen fired me. Well, he played in drag in an extremely popular show that I was hired for and did the table reading for. Everyone seemed to like me and my performance. Long story short, after the run through before the blocking and the dress rehearsal, I was fired summarily. So that's what that blurb meant. A drag queen who fired me. Sue me, it's true. Anyway, so point being, the person or kid, who was a very good friend of mine in the industry, was my replacement for that role in that episode. I was told I was too precocious. Precocious was a code word in Hollywood at that time, meaning effeminate, a little light on the feet, as they say. And so somehow after the great table reading, it was decided I was effeminate and I was dropped. I found that out from my agent, which is where you usually find out all the goodies. So, point being, I wanted to address the most popular working child actors between the years of 1977 and 1979. There were 8 of us that worked on television constantly, and kind of the only ones that were the go-tos. And I was only one of 8, but I was one of those 8 and frequently worked with those 8 in different projects. But there was really, I thought all day, you guys, I mean, not all day, but like, okay, well, who am I missing? Who am I missing? No, I'm not missing anyone. There were 8 child actors that were working all the time, that were the go-tos between 1977 and 1979, and I was one of them. The others were, well, probably, I don't know, maybe the one you might know the best. His name is Todd Bridges. He was on Different Strokes. He was one of the 8, again, working constantly. And these are actors that are not sitcom actors, meaning they don't have like multi-season roles, reoccurring roles on a sitcom where they're sort of married to that. Philip McKeon, who I worked with on Alice, could be considered one of these 8, but he was on Alice forever, so he was really never in any one of our competition because he was on a phenomenally popular show, and that took up all his time. I know Philip, I guested on Alice, and that is a whole, in fact, different show. I'm going to do Alice, all Alice. My experience with Linda Lavin and everybody on Alice. Next show, some show, soon show. So the 8 were me, Todd Bridges, we all know Todd Bridges. Todd Bridges and I worked probably more in commercials than any 8 of them, any other the 7, because that was my bread and butter. My mainstay was doing commercials. I don't know why, but I was doing that during everything. I was doing commercials through ET. I mean, I had commercial interviews like 3 times a week. So, Todd and I worked on a Kodak commercial, huge commercial, national, and we worked on Circle of Children, which was a movie of the week about autism and autistic youth in a youth home. There was Matthew Laberto, who I guested with on Little House on the Prairie. He was Melissa Gilbert's brother, as you'll recall. His brother, Patrick Laberto, was also recurring on Little House and was also one of my official competitions. Obviously not direct competition with his own brother, Matthew, but nevertheless one of the 8. Al Eisenman, that I mentioned, who replaced me on Bosom Buddies, apparently he was a little butcher. But the funny thing about Al and I is we laughed about that because Al was my sidekick on Little House on the Prairie. He had less lines. He was my buddy. I was the guest star. For Little House usually had 2 storylines. I was the star of the second storyline within the one show. Al played my sidekick. But then Al takes over my part in Bosom Buddies. So it was kind of like 6 of 1. It's like he was my sidekick in Little House. He was my replacement in Bosom Buddies. So it was kind of like this inside funny joke. Another one of the 8. Johnny Timko. Johnny Timko I worked with also on stuff. All American, redhead, freckle face, that type. He had it locked down. One of the biggest of that time, in terms of demand and frequency, was Moosey Dryer. Just Google it. The minute you see Moosey Dryer's face, you'll know exactly. You'll recognize him. So we have me, Todd, Matthew and Patrick, Al, Johnny Timko, Moosey Dryer, and Brad Savage. So Brad Savage was the son of one of the most successful agents in town, the Savage Agency, the Savage Group, whatever. And he was big. He was probably getting more of the prestigious parts than any of us. Todd, yes. Moosey, yes. Me, I'm in the mix with some frequency, 77, 79, so that's that. Brad, interesting again, a story with Brad is that I was his understudy at the Amundsen Theater in Los Angeles, which is our version of Broadway. And so Brad got the part against me for the role of On Golden Pond before it became a movie and all that big stuff. So they offered me the understudy, which was big. Mark Rydell, the big director, directed it. This was like major prestigious. The Amundsens, like, gargantuan. And I thought about it, and then I said no. I said, can you guarantee a performance? And they said no, because usually understudies sometimes are guaranteed a matinee. If they take the understudy, they are guaranteed 1 matinee. They wouldn't do it. I wanted at least 1 performance on stage with On Golden Pond at the Amundsen, and Mark Rydell loved me, but he couldn't promise that Brad wouldn't be there for every performance. And that happens. I was in a very popular play in Hollywood. I had an understudy, and there was one night that I almost didn't make it. I was sick or something late, and I get there, and he's there waiting. And it was like 5 minutes before we started, the play. And poor kid, the look on his face when I showed up, he really thought it was going to be his one night, and it wasn't. So the point is, if there is one, is that Al and I wore this crazy fun flip-flop, and he took the drag queen who fired me's role for the kid, and he was my sidekick on Little House. So, and then we had fun with all that. So camaraderie in the industry at that time was paramount between all of us in order to survive. And this competition that you may think of was not really, by and large, competition. It was survival for all of us together. So that's the show tonight. Real quick, I have two amazing lineups for next week. One is going to be later in the week. It's going to be a 6-degree separation interview with I Can't Even Begin to Start. And this man knows more about Hollywood and Broadway than I will ever know. So obviously that's going to be interesting. And then the other one is scheduled for Tuesday night, I believe, barring an act of God, and that is Nancy Allen, who I talked about with Children of the Night, who was my, basically one of my heroes for quite a time when I was a social worker when I left the film industry. And that's a whole other story. So we got stories, as you know. I love you guys, and every minute I'm here with you. I'm a dork, but it's the highlight. It's the highlight of my week, month here. So be good. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And I'll see you tomorrow. And I'll stuff you with clips before then, of course. Love you. Bye.